Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us for today's webinar on workplace reentry. Today, we're going to discuss how you can transform your existing AV technology to meet the needs of an evolving work environment. My name is Bill Chamberlain. For those of you that don't know me, in addition to being today's host, I also lead the global sales and marketing teams here at Verrex. Verrex is a leader in providing audiovisual solutions for the modern workplace. For over 70 years, we have helped organizations leverage ever-changing business communication solutions to solve problems and to grow. With our global presence, Verrex is proud to help organizations use their current audiovisual solutions to meet an entirely new set of business challenges. Today's webinar focuses on the challenges of bringing employees back into the office with the ongoing concerns about COVID-19. The global health pandemic has also impacted the broader economy, creating a sharp focus on budgets. Our discussion today will examine how organizations can cost-effectively use audiovisual technology to keep employees safe. Our panelists on today's webinar bring a cohesive view of the dynamics unfolding across the United States and how audiovisual technology is helping. With insight on the East Coast is Jonathan Shore, our Senior Account Executive. For over 20 years, Jonathan has worked with multinational organizations on their systems integration and service needs. From video walls to strategic conferencing solutions, Jonathan is the go-to resource for many companies. Welcome, Jonathan. To bring a West Coast perspective, I'd like to introduce John Powell. John is our general manager of our West Coast operations. John has spent over 25 years as an executive for high-tech companies. His team works with some incredible organizations and household names to design and deploy audiovisual solutions that are visually stunning and incredibly effective. Good morning, John.
Good morning, Bill, and everyone else on this webinar. Greetings from California. It's perfect weather for a webinar.
As always, gotta love California weather. And last, we are thankful for that Ben Vandola Grubb, Verrex's Assistant Vice President of Engineering Services, is back with us today. Those that joined us last month know that Ben brings both technical knowledge on the intricacies of AV systems and tremendous real-world experience designing solutions. Ben will once again be the moderator for today's session and our technical expert. Welcome, Ben.
Thank you, Bill. Good morning.
Before I turn the call over to Ben, a few administrative details. First, we are recording today's session and we'll make a replay available afterwards. Also, there will be a Q&A period towards the end of the webinar. Please use the Q&A button located at the bottom of your screen and type in your questions. If we don't get to your question during the session, someone will personally reach out after it. And with that, I'll turn it over to you, Ben.
Thank you very much, Bill. So today we're going to discuss the enhancements to existing technologies throughout the corporate office. And we're going to walk you through the day, your day, as you go through getting back to work. You arrive at the front door, you're going to pass through security, the entrance. You're going to walk through, maybe take the elevator to get up to your floor, walk over to your own personal desk, your workspace. And then eventually later on in the day, you're going to need to get some coffee. You might need to use the restroom or grab some lunch. And then you'll probably also need to attend a meeting at some point. So you are going to be entering a conference room. And we're going to be examining and taking a look because your experience is going to be different now than it was just a few months ago. So maybe when you arrive at the conference room or the cafe, there's going to be new occupancy limits. And there are technologies that enable us to utilize the space effectively while also keeping us safe. And we're also going to be talking about how we can minimize shared touch points, whether that's throughout the office or in the conference room as well. So when you get there, you're going to first arrive at the front door, have to enter your office. So John, I know that you've been working with a variety of different clients and having these conversations and helping people plan, but let's talk about what you have deployed in your own office. Would you mind telling me about this?
Sure. Hey, Ben. Because Verrex, like a lot of our customers, prioritizes employee safety, in our offices in the US and abroad, employees and visitors are subjected to a hands-free thermal temperature check as they enter our lobby or enter the building through an employee entrance. If an employee or a visitor registers a temperature above 100.4 degrees, then they are asked to leave the premise and can only re-enter based on the guidelines outlined in our pandemic back to work plan. This plan covers PPE and cleaning protocols and the pre-arrival questionnaire that visitors are required to complete before they show up at one of our offices.
Could you tell me a little bit more about the touchless temperature checkpoints?
Sure, Ben. There are currently two solutions, both Android-powered products. that dominate the market today. One uses a commercial tablet that comes in 10, 16, and 22-inch diagonal screens. The other uses what looks like a large cell phone with an 8-inch diagonal screen. The latter is built on technology from a well-known phone manufacturer that also does screens for Mercedes and other makes of cars. Both have thermal imaging cameras attached to them and mounting options that allow screens to be hung in a number of different ways.
So how do these work?
Well, when a person gets about 1 meter away from either solution, it flashes the person's temperature and indicates whether you passed or failed. One of the solutions announces the result while the other starts beeping madly if you failed the temperature check. One has a few more features than the other right now, but I think over the next month or so, I expect both to have the capability to perform facial recognition, send alerts, and integrate with popular access and security systems, including those with automatic doors.
In your office today, is it integrated yet, or is it standalone?
Today, it's standalone. And for some companies, these features that I just mentioned aren't going to be very important to them. They're okay with operating only on an honor system, or they're able to position a receptionist, say, within view or earshot of the device. For others, companies, these features are going to be very important as they'll use automation to lock out or to block the entry of anyone who fails the temperature test.
It sounds like it's going to range because you might have a corporate office with 30, 60, 100 floors, and you're going to have to pass through the building security, and they might have different protocols than your own company once you get up to your 17th floor. So there may be different checkpoints along the way, along your path to get to your desk.
Exactly.
Jonathan, one of the things we've been talking about is occupancy limits. Can you tell us how that relates to people counters and give us some background there?
Sure. Well, people counters, it's a technology that's been around for years in the retail environment. And these are devices that are mounted in the ceiling, on the walls in certain areas, use of various different types of technology between 3D imaging, facial recognition, artificial intelligence to understand who is actually in the retail environment, who's shopping, who's stopping at a certain rack, what are their age, what is their gender and whatnot. So these people counters provide metrics, and we feel that that technology is going to translate very easily into this side of things to enforce the occupancy mandates that are being set forth, so that when people are coming off the elevators and entering the floors, even though we feel that there's going to be some element of reduced going back to work where people might be arriving on even days, even dates or odd dates, or maybe some people are coming Monday, Wednesday, Friday, some other people are coming Tuesday and Thursday. There are going to be schedules put in place to help reduce. But they're going to have to prove to some extent if there are mandates put out to the government or maybe just the corporate board that they actually did adhere to those statutes as far as the lower occupancy. And these people counters allow them to do that on the separate floors to understand, yes, we've stayed under 50% or we've stayed under 60%. Because these things are web enabled, we can change the criteria so that as the restrictions start to loosen over time and they get to 60%, 75%, that can be changed and then altered. But if there was some, unfortunately, if there was some sort of flare up or something where it started to kind of come back a little bit in the fall and they started to reduce capacity, we can change them accordingly. But we're excited about the integration of people counters within our world.
That does sound really useful to me, and I'm also in agreement that I think it's going to become very prevalent. John, digital signage has potentially another seemingly obvious enhancement that we can provide at this time. What are you seeing for digital signage as we re-enter the workplace?
So when you think about it, the most effective solution for getting all of us to remember to social distance, wear our face masks in public areas, wash our hands and sanitize our workspaces, and to provide us with the latest COVID-19 updates is digital signage. Then all sorts of studies have shown that digital signage is far more effective than printed posters.
And what about the investment? You know, it's going to cost
Well,
me more money to do digital signage than a poster.
it is, but let's look at why this is an effective solution. I mean, it's because people spend so much time engaging, otherwise staring at digital signs than posters. And as a result, digital signage allows people to recall a lot more information being shown. Most digital signage is network-based today, so the content can be changed easily and as often as you want. And I read one survey recently. They said that employers lose about $11,000 a year per employee as a result of poor internal communication. Well, even if this survey's results are overstated by 5 or 10 times, digital signage is still a good way to improve a company's internal communication. Besides showing the latest weather and news ticker headlines, tracking the ponies, digital signage can be used to now or after the pandemic is over to share company news, celebrate sales or operational results, remind people to submit their timesheets, or to complete their annual insurance selections.
I noticed that in our own corporate office, because we are open at this point with a limited capacity, 50% or less, that there are different ways you can walk to your desk. So I'm also envisioning digital signage to say, if you're in that part of the building, you turn right. If you're in that part of the building, you turn left. Or maybe it's even a people flow that follows a clockwise or a counterclockwise flow. And I think different organizations were going to come up with different plans. Have you been involved in these kind of thought process?
Yeah, companies are looking at ways to use digital signage to introduce wayfinding to help staff and visitors, professors and students, and healthcare providers and patients navigate the safest and shortest route to, like, a conference room, a classroom, a hospital room within the building, or to another location across campus. Today, there's even voice-activated signage solutions that can answer questions based on the built-in speech recognition capabilities embedded in the operating system in some media players.
It's interesting because it can be fairly interactive in that way. So it's a broad spectrum. It could be a static image or a fully interactive solution, and anything in between.
And I think one thing you said before, Ben, when you have people counters and you have digital signage, they can sort of work together to help understand, if an area has too many people, if it's a pantry, we can get real-time information to say, really, you should, avoid this area for now, or go around another area, another corridor. So there's going to be a lot of tight integration between signage, people counting, occupancy sensors, things like that.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of enhancements here that can help us to all stay safe. So as you've navigated the hallways, the corridors of the office, you eventually make it to your own workspace, whether it's a desk or a cubicle, an open office space. Jonathan, what technology do you think is important within the individual workspace?
Well, it's sort of interesting. Obviously, we've all been home for the past few months, and so web conferencing sort of really skyrocketed, and a lot of technology was purchased for the home office. We had offices, some of our customers close and send their people home, but then they weren't really equipped to be able to do video conferencing. So things were bought maybe in a faster than normal way as far as vetting the technology and sent out just to be able to get them up and running again. So I think one of the main things when you get to your desk at your office, first of all, you have to wear pants for the meeting. So that's like the first change.
Is that different when you're at home, maybe?
Of course, I always wear pants for my meetings. But I think what we want to make sure is that at your desk, there's going to be this extension of video conferencing where maybe in the past, and I've seen this before, where a lot of people, I would send, video call, invites out at their desk, and they'd say they didn't have a camera at their desk, or they didn't have a microphone, or maybe it was built into their laptop, but their laptop was closed because it had a docking station. And so it's very interesting because they would say, well, if we're going to do video conferencing, we're just going to go to a conference room. Now that people have been using this technology at home, it's much more prevalent, and they're going to want to use it more at the office. So it's just an extension of what they've been doing at home. So we want to make sure that the environment is going to support that, and the technology chosen is going to support where they're sitting. So a lot of things are going to come into consideration between acoustics. Very important aspect. What technology you're choosing. If you're in an open area and there's people sitting, even though there's going to be some social distancing guidelines where people can't sit, a certain distance away from you, there is potential for spillover. There is potential for hearing that person or disturbing that person if your speakers are on. So are headphones a better choice for some areas? And then maybe in private offices, a different type of technology could be used in that case. So all those things have to be taken into consideration. Lighting is an important aspect. Understanding, if you're backlit or if your camera's up against a window, how is that going to perform? Or if you're really shiny on top, how that's going to affect. So
I have absolutely seen a variety of different camera angles, lighting
camera
scenarios,
angles,
situations.
right? So it's important. And I think another thing, when you look at meeting protocol, I think all of us have probably been on a birthday Zoom call in the past couple of months. I know I've been on a few. And some of them are really bad because nobody was really moderating the call. Everybody was just kind of talking over one another. And so I think that this has always been sort of an issue that's sort of plagued us in a way, just in the video conference world, people maybe having side conversations in rooms. And so I think that now that video conferencing, cloud video conferencing is becoming much more prevalent, that we need to understand meeting protocol and not having side conversations, making sure you're muting your microphone when you're not, speaking, having somebody guide the meeting in that way. So we can understand, how successful and how interactive the meeting is going to be. One of the things that we've lost with all of this virtual meetings is just being able to talk to somebody at the water cooler, being able to just have a side conversation, maybe talk about something that you didn't even expect to talk about. And sometimes the best ideas come from those types of conversations. So in some ways we've lost that. And so I think we want to try to use the tools of cloud conferencing to be able to sort of get some of that back.
And I've noticed, and I've listened to other people thinking and having these types of conversations saying that, right now you and I are effective when we're working from home because we already have a relationship. We know each other, we know how we work and think. And so that enables us just to go. But if I've never met you and never worked with you in person, never developed that relationship, we're left in the cold in some capacity because we're not going to be as effective working together.
Yep, I agree. But I think to some extent, because the videos become, so much more pervasive in the workplace, that people are more open to it. I mean, before any of this was even happening, I've been sending out, Zoom links for the past, couple of years now. And sometimes people wouldn't turn their cameras on, and I would say, turn your camera on, like, especially if I've never met the person before. Mm-hmm. So, and then people would start to now people are getting more used to that, being on camera, making sure they're not moving their camera around the house and, doing whatever they're doing.
I've seen a lot of peer pressure for everyone to have their camera on, and
yeah, I think we should peer pressure each other. Exactly.
Absolutely.
Turn your camera on. So, because a meeting is always going to be better being able to see facial expressions and being able to have that interactive. And it kind of does help, with the camera and how the window lights up with the person speaking to kind of give some order and semblance to the meeting, as opposed to just a regular telephone call where you can easily be speaking over one another.
Yeah. And a minute ago, you were talking about how when you first get back into your workspace, your desk at the office, it's going to be different than whatever you built at home to enable yourself to be effective. So now, if you were that person who would always go to that conference room, maybe your conference rooms are closed for the short term. Maybe they only allow 2 people, so you can't have that 6-person meeting. It is important that you start thinking about what kind of microphone and camera do I have on my desk? Because if your laptop's off to the side and closed because you're running on dual monitors, suddenly you don't have a camera. So that's an important aspect as well to evaluate.
And lastly, putting together, we've put together bundles that have certain type of cameras, certain type of monitors, microphones, speakers, and it really depends on who's talking and where they are. If it's just somebody doing a general sort of work meeting, kickoff meetings, and then maybe it's not as critical. A headphone, maybe this and that kind of works. But if a CEO or C-level executive is trying to give a webinar like this, or some type of public address to the company, we want to put them in the best possible light. We want to have the best possible lighting, maybe even a green screen to be able to create a virtual background. So we've kind of put together the bundles that kind of range from like the entry level all the way up to sort of the C-level thing.
Yeah, and I think those are very useful. So moving on here, the next thing that's going to happen is you are going to want to get a cup of coffee, and the rules may be changing when you walk to that pantry or the corporate cafeteria. John, what have you been seeing in the public gathering spaces in the office?
Yeah, so in addition to people counters that Jonathan spoke about, and digital signage, which was also previously covered, you may start to see the requirement to schedule access to your company's gym and other public gathering spaces. Probably at the very least, you might need to track the number of people in the cafe or pantry, or even the bathroom, to avoid wait times or being sent back to your office due to new occupancy requirements.
I think it's worth noting that people counters can be literal people counters, just like an emotion sensor that doesn't have a camera, but it could be a camera. So obviously, if you're monitoring only allowing 2 people into the restroom at a time, that's not a camera, that's a straight up people counter. But if it's in a conference room, you could go either way. You know, we're going to get to that in a few minutes here. But one of the things I was thinking about is if I don't want to walk to the cafe and be turned away. So it'd be really useful if the people counter monitors in real time and gives me feedback, whether that could be an app on my phone or even just the internal corporate website. There's 17 people in the cafe, 50 are allowed, so now's a good time to go grab something.
I think at some point the cafeterias are going to be potentially booked to some extent based on maybe preferences, maybe based on, you know, the first letter of your last name comes between 12 and 12:30, 12:30 to 1. It really just depends. But there are other spaces like we spoke about that are much more ad hoc, like a pantry. And, you know, we're trying to adhere to corporate mandates as far as occupancy so that we're not constantly seeing people, you know, ignoring the social distancing rules and kind of being close together in those types of environments.
Yeah, and I think it's important that we also point out that each company is going to create their own rules or guidelines. You know, we may all be following best practices that the CDC is putting out, but the implementation is going to differ. And I want to jump into the meeting rooms here because some of the rules that we may or may not put into play regarding occupancy and so forth and so on are going to change. So, Jonathan, the first one here on the list is room scheduling. Now, that exists today, but what enhancements are we going to see?
So yeah, room scheduling has been a great technology. I think that a lot of people have started to take more advantage of the room scheduling. And room scheduling is just, you know, for people who don't know, it's a software platform. It can be an add-on to Outlook, or it can be an aspect of Outlook, or it can be, you know, web-based, where you're booking conference rooms. Most room scheduling systems have the ability to put in search criteria. So if you know you're going to, and again, this is before COVID, if you know you need to invite 8 people to the meeting, you would do a search for meeting rooms that had a minimal occupancy of 8 people. And then maybe you didn't want to have more than 12 seats in the room because you didn't want to have 8 people in a room that sat 30, because that would kind of feel awkward. Mm-hmm. So you put a search criteria, minimum of 8 people, maximum of 12 people, and then it gives you the list of rooms, also gives you the list of availability on times and dates. And then you would pick your date, book it, and it will automatically send the email to, you know, the respective people. So I think that we're going to be seeing a lot more of that because of the fact that conference rooms are going to change from an occupancy standpoint. We're bringing people back into the office. We want to let them leverage the technology in the rooms that are there, but there is going to be a reduction. So maybe that's a 50% at first. Maybe we're actually physically taking out the chairs in the conference room and only leaving half the chairs available. Well, now we have to go back into the room scheduling software and update that accordingly so that when you put in your search criteria, that it automatically updates and does those types of searches. And if you are inviting somebody,
I was going to ask, how's that going to tie into the people counting?
Well, I think it can or it can't tie in. It really depends on, you know, how much is the honor system and how much is really going to be monitored closely by, you know, the building security. And it kind of goes back to what John was saying before about the temperature readers. If there's a temperature reader at an unmanned door where in the past you just badged your, you know, put your badge and walked in, how many times has somebody badged it and they saw, oh, there's my coworker, I'm just going to hold the door open for that person, they're going to come through. How's that going to change? Mm-hmm. Making sure that everybody's doing that, and that if somebody does register a temperature, what happens then? Is it an honor system? That person goes, or is security escorting them back out? So it's the same thing with conference rooms. If the occupancy is 4, are we going to put a people counter in as opposed to just an occupancy sensor that just senses somebody coming in to say, you've reached maximum occupancy? The other thing, when you're inviting external people into a meeting, which, you know, is slowly going to start happening more, room scheduling software can send out an email with a questionnaire sort of attached to it, asking them, have you been, around people who have been diagnosed? Have you traveled to a certain, area? And if that questionnaire comes back, we may determine whether or not that person can be allowed to even come to site. So there's going to be a lot of those things that are sort of tied in. And lastly, cleaning time. That was always an aspect of room scheduling. You could always put in a certain criteria as far as resetting the room. But now I think that's going to be even more important when we're talking about cleaning the room, from a germ perspective, and being able to disinfect the surfaces, the touch surfaces, the chairs, the table, and things like that. So that will probably become more of a standard criteria, saying, hey, we always need minimum a half an hour or 15 minutes, whatever the case is, depending on the room size in between meetings.
So it sounds like that could potentially even automatically call the facilities team in for cleaning or disinfecting, maybe even
Sure.
add into your motion sensor. It was scheduled for an hour, but at 47 minutes, the room's empty, and that could trigger an email.
Yep. And I think the panels on the outside of the room, where in the past, there were like LEDs that kind of show up, just whether the room is occupied or the room is busy, green or red, that could be added to maximum occupancy has been achieved, or, no one else can come into the room, whatever the case is, which I think is going to be important for other types of spaces that maybe aren't even booked, huddle spaces where they're not really part of the room scheduling system, but a space that in the past might have only been designed for 3 people or 4 people. Now we have to know that whether that huddle room is being used. So you can look down the hall and say, okay, huddle 1 and 2 are being used, and huddle 3 is open, so I can get into that room to make a
Maybe
call.
it's even a color trigger. Green means empty, orange means there's someone on here, but we're not at max occupancy, and red now means this room's capped, either at the max or over max. Don't come in. That makes
Absolutely.
sense. So the next thing here is that most conference rooms have been designed with a specific use case in mind. John, what potential changes do you see coming along these lines?
Well, Ben, as companies start to reopen and look at their existing meeting rooms, they're going to have to consider if they have enough video conferencing enabled rooms to handle meetings between employees in the office and employees working from home. They also have to consider that many suppliers and customers may now have to limit their face-to-face meetings to either safety concerns or because of travel restrictions. In addition, this pandemic has caused millions of people to adopt video conferencing as an everyday means of communication, which Jonathan and you were talking about earlier. Most of us have spent the past 3 months in both our personal and business lives on web-based video conferences. Whether it's playing bingo or family feud or birthday parties or webinars and business meetings. It's safe to say that for most of us now, video conferencing has become as normal as texting or making telephone calls.
My expectation at this point is every meeting has an aspect of video. Internally, we turned off our dial-in audio call bridging surface, I think 2 years ago at this point, and our default has been every call is video enabled. Someone may or may not turn on their camera. Nowadays, they all do. But that's the shift we've been made. How about the room layouts and display sizing?
Yeah. So for some existing, but especially for all new VC-enabled rooms, companies will need to look at several basic factors, such as the type and location of microphones in their meeting rooms. Today, they may use wired pendant mics that hang from the ceiling throughout all their conference rooms, but in the future, based on new design requirements, it might make sense for them to say switch over to a wireless table array mic solution. In the past, they may have not cared if the ceiling speakers didn't adequately cover the far ends of a room, but now today, due to new room layouts, this may need to be addressed in order to ensure quality sound across the entire space. And as architects design rooms to meet new social distancing guidelines, people may now be sitting further away or at a more severe angle from displays or screens. As a result, the clarity and size of the display or screen will also need to be looked at.
So now I'm thinking about camera angles, because now if I'm required to sit 6 feet away from you, we may not have a good camera shot. And I think you have the same problem in your own conference room there in California.
Yeah, exactly, Ben. The 10-person conference table in the room that's directly across from my office can now only safely accommodate 3 people, with 2 being at the far ends of the table. The view width and location of our VC camera now needs to be considered, and especially because, you know, in the future here, some rooms may now be used as standing only meeting rooms, or for either standing or sitting meetings. And the last thing you want to have is a camera end up being at stomach level, especially for a big guy like me.
I have heard that standing meetings might be the future, in the sense that they do promote social distancing. Because if I sit down next to you, that's a chair. But if I'm standing, I'm probably going to keep some distance away from you. And I know a minute ago you were talking about how VC-enabled rooms are the future, because we all do have that expectation. Every conference room, doesn't matter how big or small it is going to have some amount of VC capabilities. And I've envisioned even the simple repurposing of what had been your 3 or 4 person huddle room. Now it's suddenly a single person room, but that has great audio and video when you are going to have that client call, instead of sitting at your desk in the dark with a poor built-in webcam and feel bad for the people that have the webcam at the bottom of their screen as opposed to the top of the screen in their laptop, when you are still using your built-in, because that's basically the worst camera angle that you can possibly have. So it's interesting.
And I think we're going to see a big shift as far as new construction. So John was talking about maybe existing rooms and how we can make sure the existing rooms, you know, can accommodate the new seating layouts. But new construction, new design, you know, for years things had shifted to open floor plans and smaller huddle rooms. I think we're going to see another shift towards conference rooms that can have that capacity and maintain social distancing. And I think the fact that because, you know, video conferencing has become, again, more prevalent and more important and prioritized, that the technology and the environment is going to have to support that. Better lighting, better acoustics, you know, where sometimes in the past maybe we might make recommendations on acoustics and maybe they were kind of set aside because, you know, a certain fit and finish was trying to be achieved in the conference room. Now that we're trying to deliver a better video conference experience, we can't set those criteria aside. So we have to pay attention to the noise level in the room, the acoustics in the room, the lighting, and again, just as you mentioned, all the positions, you know, positioning of the camera and the displays.
When we first started talking internally about what do we think the architecture of the new conference floors are going to look like, my first thought was, well, everything's going to be closed off in small spaces. But I think in reality, it's maybe complete opposite, in the sense that, you know, a lot of the architects have been publishing their vision for the future. And the most interesting one that I saw had conference rooms all lined up in a row with only 2 walls per conference room and a hallway on either side. And I think for a variety of things, airflow, you can clean the air out faster that way when there's no walls. And it also does promote that social distancing, because I can be standing even potentially slightly into the corridor area. But that gives us the impetus to have that better audio, because we don't want it spilling down the hallway and interrupting the next meeting. So we can focus, you know, our audio for microphones and speakers for those types of environments.
It's really the new telephone booth in a way.
Mm-hmm.
That used to be in offices.
Yeah, and those are part of the conversations as well that still are going to be prevalent. Let's move into control, you know, because this is going to be the next big enhancement of what we're doing. And Jonathan, you know, ideally it'd be great if I walked into a conference room and I don't have to touch anything, but what's the difference? Define touch-less as it's written here for me.
Sure. Well, I think we're all familiar with existing technology in conference rooms, a traditional way of doing things, putting a touch screen on a wall or on a table. And then when someone comes in, they're pressing turn system on, they're pressing launch video call, they're pressing, you know, pan the camera this way, they're pressing share content. So they've pressed the touch panel 4 or 5 times just to be able to get to this place of having a video call and sharing content. So what we're trying to move towards is touch-less or no-touch type technology, where we don't have to have this common touch point within the conference room. So The no-touch technology can lead to a couple different things. One can be sort of a voice-activated or voice command type system. And we're seeing customers asking for that. They've been asking for that sort of because they thought it was cool. And now they're asking for it because they feel like it's more of a requirement. And we're seeing that there are ways to use voice commands to sort of launch calls and things of that nature. But we're not quite at the level yet. We have to make sure that we're understanding the phrases that can be used. You know, start my meeting, turn the system on, present my laptop. These are all ways to start the meeting, but we have to understand how the voice activated system is going to respond to that. And also there could be security concerns because right now a lot of those products are web enabled. And so they're, you know, recording voices and sending them out. And so I think that, you know, we're going to find some of our customers are going to probably shy away from that.
I know that we've had a lot of conversations with the clients about voice control, but what about you? Have your clients actually implemented it in the conference space?
Not currently. It's more of just been talk about, you know, maybe they saw it, or, I mean, you know, it's been on TV for years. I mean, even Star Trek, you know, it's like put it up on the screen or whatever, and it's the computer just responded. But it's definitely something that's going to be in development more and more. I think another aspect that's been around for many years, but it wasn't used as much as mobile control, being able to come in and use your phone to control the system. Now that's out there now, but I don't think it's really been taken advantage of. And I think that the manufacturers might shift on how that works. Adding QR codes where you take a picture of a QR code with your phone and it automatically puts the control onto your phone as far as controlling the system. Or pre-installing these apps onto your phone, or, you know, the corporate phone that's given out, so that, again, you have access to those types of controls. We also want to make sure that the systems are simplified and acting smarter. We want to use cameras that automatically frame or automatically adjust to the person who's speaking. So we're going to see a lot more of that technology coming out. When a laptop is plugged in or shared, we want that to automatically be shared into the call. You know, we want things to be smarter so you don't have to take as many steps in order to be able to just, again, start your call and share your content.
I think automation is the immediate future because it's going to be user friendly in the sense that the motion sensor knows I walked into the room, the display turns on, and I'm going to wirelessly share my content, whether that's just a presentation or a call. That pops up on screen, gives me a splash screen on the display that says, here's how you connect to this room. Either open this app or go to this browser IP address or, you know, website and put in this 4-digit code and you're off and running.
Agreed.
I think that'll be much easier. So John, one of the new buzzwords been thrown around even before COVID-19, but it's really prevalent now, is BYOM. What does this mean and what can it do for me?
So for some of the dinner party video conferencing calls I've been on, it's meant bring your own margarita. But for purposes of this call, it's bring your own meeting. It's driving meetings from a personal device. Now today it's not unusual, you know, to wirelessly share audio and video presentation content from your own device to a display or screen in a conference room. But as we move towards touchless and less touch solutions, you know, technology is now enabling us to have AV systems in meeting rooms that wirelessly send USB peripherals back to our laptop. You know, this means that we can now control all the room microphones, cameras, and speakers from our laptop. You know, Ben, your personal device now will have the capability to act as both the presenter and the AV system's room controller. And if I were a germaphobe, I would be thrilled that I wouldn't have to touch anyone else's equipment in order to make this happen.
You don't have to be a germaphobe to be thrilled because I'm excited about it coming. I don't think I'm a germaphobe. But that's really great because that means you bring in your own device and it doesn't matter if you're going to be running a Zoom call, a Microsoft Teams call, a Cisco WebEx call, or any other platform, because you suddenly have access to all these USB peripherals wirelessly, meaning you're not touching a shared device, and you run your call from your laptop. But Jonathan, the flip side would be a dedicated appliance. I want to get your thoughts on the matter here.
Sure, and I think the bring your own meeting concept is great. People come in and allows them, as you said before, to have an open platform to be able to use their platform, or maybe they were invited to a meeting, that was something from a completely different platform. So they're just opening up, their Outlook and clicking on the link to something else. But I think we have to be careful because there is more potential for user error in this case, where maybe they're not selecting the right input or output or USB peripheral, or they're taking more time to get the meeting set up or started. I think an advantage to the appliance and having what is in the room ready to go always is that you can come in and all the platforms have a single click to join. You've invited the room through room scheduling. You come in, you press your button and you're joined. So, and I think as an extension to that, it's important, and I've been talking about this for years, I think it's even more important now, is that the technology that's in the conference room needs to be the extension of what's on the desktop. In the past, years ago, there was one type of video conferencing platform on the desktop, some sort of UC software that people probably never used at the time. And then they went into the conference room and there was completely something different. They had to learn a whole new interface and they didn't talk to one another. And that's where we saw really a low adoption rate of video. Now we want to take that cloud conferencing or whatever platform that has been used the past few months on the computers at home and extend that into the conference room. So it's the same interface. We're going to raise adoption and we're going to have a much smoother meeting start. So we're not like, the meeting starts at 11, but then the video call didn't get launched till 11:05, 11:10. How many times have we seen that? So having that appliance in the room where it's ready to go, single click to join, I think is, it has its advantages as well, in addition to the BYOM.
That makes sense. And what about the platform swaps? I know that one of your clients was on Cisco, and then they moved over to Google, and now in the past couple of months they're on Zoom. So what's your approach there?
Well, what was really fun about that customer is that they tried to have like an overflow between them so that they could have Zoom and Cisco working, or Google and Cisco working for a while, and then so that was all fun trying to do both. I think that we can be smart about the technology that we've leveraged in the past few years in rooms so that changing the platform shouldn't be a forklift upgrade in these rooms. It's really going to allow us to leverage what's there and just cherry pick the different things that we need to replace or upgrade or change. And then a lot of the control manufacturers are allowing us to take whatever platform that they've decided upon, whether it be Teams or Zoom or whatever, and then put that control onto the control panel. So we're not talking about major changes or upgrades. But I think it's important, again, going back to that adoption, that we're not trying to water down the system. I think what we've seen at times is our customers say to us, well, we want to be able to do anything. We want to be able to do this meeting, that type of meeting, yours meeting, And I think when you try to account for a lot of different platforms, it can be challenging in that respect, as far as the user experience and being able to come into a room and just launch a call. We also want to make sure that we're using certified peripherals when it comes to some of these platforms, because we've seen in the past, I won't name them specifically on this call, but there was one platform where just because it was a USB device and we thought, hey, it's a USB camera, of course it's going to work, or it's a USB microphone, of course it's going to work. Well, it wasn't certified and it presented intermittent problems. So we have to be cognizant of what platforms are getting certified, what manufacturers are getting certified with the different platforms. And if one hasn't been certified, we can help facilitate that. We can help bridge the gap between the manufacturer and the provider. But it's an important aspect of when we're doing these platform swaps.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I've also been engaged in streaming and recording conversations more than ever. What about you?
Yeah, I think it's been out there for years, but maybe not taken advantage of as much in the corporate environment at times. I think certainly we've seen it in the educational environment where higher ed might, do lecture capture, record, a lecture with the presentation and then put it onto, their video on demand service or whatever it is, so that the students can watch it later. I think we're going to see a lot more of that with people, with attending meetings, because let's face it, a lot of these platforms, just like Bill said in the beginning, we're recording this webinar. So, we're going to see a lot more of that, of recording training sessions, recording company addresses, and being able to view that later. And also, again, one-way streaming, just like we're doing now, being able to take this, send this link out, and being able to share information to a lot more people than we did in the past.
I think from the recording aspect, you can go down the more professional route and have it custom framed and queued and keyed. But on this platform, we're running Zoom webinar right here, it's recording it. There's nothing that I can do to manage what it's going to do with the recording. There's content, and our images are going to appear on the side of the screen. I can't change that, but the barrier to entry is extremely low because we can all just record, and you have that. And then you could take it up 1 notch, 10 notches, depending on your needs for that recording. So in summary here, I think it's important that we point out that none of this is reinventing the wheel. Everything in our conversation today is utilizing existing technology in new ways to help us re-enter our workplace safely and effectively. And a lot of it is just the natural evolutionary path of the technology that we've already been on, but in some cases it's accelerating. And so it's exciting because I do think in the end, it's going to enable us to have systems or provide systems that are more user-friendly, because every piece of hardware that we buy does 10 things, and maybe traditionally you use 3 of those aspects, and maybe we can use more of those now to help streamline the conversation. So Bill, I wanted to bring you back in here, and we can move over to our questions and answers. I want to see if you have anything queued up for us.
Yeah, thanks, Ben. Before we start the Q&A, just a quick reminder, you can use the Q&A button at the bottom of the screen. We've got a few here that I'd like to bring up. Well, actually, before we even do, one that I wanted to kind of kick this off with, we spoke about some of the technology, but a lot of my clients are actually asking opinions. Do you recommend voice control?
That's a good question. I'll go ahead and kick it off here. So, there's very few clients that we have on the corporate side that have actually implemented voice control. But we have proven it in-house, and we've had it running for 2 years. So there's going to be limitations. There's different phrasing that is depending on your platform. The most experimenting we've done is with Amazon for Business. So you're talking with Alexa. One nice thing though is that Jonathan might say, turn on the system. John Powell might say, turn on the TV, and Bill might say, start my meeting. But we can group those commands so that they could all perform a similar action. But I think there's a longer path. And as John was talking about before, that there are security concerns. I was on a call with a client earlier this week, and they were interested in talking about Amazon for Business in their conference room. And so we had 2 folks on from the client side, and then so we went through the spiel. And so the final question was, so what do you think the IT security team is going to say? And they said, no way, let's go back to the question about automation.
Well, Ben, we're using voice activation at home today for our AV systems, or many of us are, or at least our children are. I envision that to eventually to spill over into the office, just like most other AV technologies have done.
It was about 2 weeks ago when my daughter ran in and said, I figured out how to talk to the TV. And then she hands me the remote for the Fire Stick, and we were able to go back, and her voice is recorded, and we could hear playing back from the cloud my daughter's voice. You may not realize how much of your own personal information or data is actually out there.
I think that, what we talked about before, partnering automatic aspects of technology with the voice activation is going to be the best approach, because you're not going to say, pan camera to the right. All right, a little more, a little more. No, okay, go back the other way, So there has to be some aspect to just say, show front camera or show rear camera. Now you've shown it. Now that camera needs to do something maybe on its own, as far as being able to do facial recognition, focus in, and understand where it needs to go.
And you were saying that before as one of the most critical and easy aspects. There's many camera solutions out there that will automatically zoom in and frame me as I walk into the room, as I sit down, as I talk.
Yep.
All right, this one I like. Have you seen a way to implement QR codes for touchless uses, such as using it in digital signage, meeting rooms, guest entry, or other uses? Any easy solution for implementing QR codes to replace previous touch points or touchscreens?
So the short answer is yes. There's different levels that we can take it. So the one that, it's not the simplest, but you walk in, there's a QR code. It could be printed on a paper outside the door, on the front wall, or it could even be a splash screen. on the display itself, and it can launch the control interface on your personal device. In most cases, it's probably just going to be a phone. You know, and as we've moved into this, sorry for getting slightly technical here, but the HTML5 world, you know, it's going to automatically be able to resize that based on the resolution of my phone versus your phone. They might be a different resolution, but it will automatically fill my phone, where we couldn't do that in the past when we were more in an Adobe world.
We've seen QR codes used a lot in digital signage where if something came up where you wanted more information about something, or you wanted to go to, you know, whatever the digital signage was displaying, being able to take the QR code will come up and you'd be able to snap it with your phone and be able to go to a certain web page on your phone automatically, or maybe go to whatever you were shopping for. So I think there's going to be a lot of aspects that are going to be expanded upon with that.
Mm-hmm.
This next question, I think it ties, it's a follow-up to the voice control conversation. How do you feel about using gesture control? I know that with the latest high-end BMW units, you can use gesture controls to turn the volume up and down for the radio.
Yeah, I think gesture control, I think we've seen that a lot with digital signage in the past. More aesthetic, where you might be in an area. I've seen it where you stand in a certain area, and then on the screen it creates like an avatar of you, and it kind of follows you. Personally, I think it's something that could be used, but it really depends on the system complexity. I mean, we have multi-purpose spaces that are divisible doors and have multiple cameras and things like that. So I think in those types of environments, I think we're talking about much simpler use case scenario rooms where it's just start the meeting and share your content, and that's it. And maybe, you know, muting the microphone, I don't know, or stopping the meeting. I mean, you know, we have to come up with what the gestures are and what they're going to perform, but I still think we're going to be in those type of environments. It's going to be much simpler systems that they're going to be interfacing with.
If we're talking about the traditional meeting or conference room, I'd much rather go down the path of voice control than gesture control, you know, because there might have 6 people in a room whose gestures are going to do it. And I might just be stretching, you know, but if I say end my call, you know, that's rather obvious.
Another question, can you please elaborate on cloud conferencing?
So we're taking the perspective of any type of video-enabled collaboration or conferencing calls that go outbound outside of your organization in terms of establishing the call and then either coming back in or going elsewhere, going to your client base. So specifically, we're talking about Zoom, we're talking about WebEx, we're talking about Microsoft Teams, so that those calls, they're secure, but they're not staying in most cases. You can do on-prem solutions, but the average solution is the calls going outbound, going somewhere else, and then going down again out of the cloud to the, whether it's your home or the corporate office for all the people who are involved in that conversation.
The cloud, I mean, the cloud is maybe another word for the internet. I mean, so cloud-based conferencing is really internet-based conferencing. We are all connected to Zoom, but we're not connected directly to each other. When we're not connecting back to the Verrex, you know, office, we're all connecting to Zoom servers that are dispersed around the country, depending on where you are. And then the Zoom servers have created a cloud that connect them back together. And so, you know, everybody has their own cloud. We have Microsoft uses, you know, for Teams, their cloud. Google uses their cloud for Hangouts. Facebook is going to be coming out with a business service for their cloud. And then as an extension to the cloud, there's how to come in from a telephone, how to come in from a traditional SIP or H.323 system, from a room-based system. And so there are a lot of different cloud providers. Zoom has certainly got the biggest press when it came out of this whole, you know, COVID situation. They were the ones that, sort of exploded in popularity. But that's really what the inference is, that it's internet, where in the past it might have been more just point-to-point calls, a room system calling another room system.
All right, another one. Regarding this culture shift that you spoke about is, and how we're going to use AV going forward, who does Verrex feel will drive or manage this change within an organization? Global realty / facilities teams, IT, architects? Question mark.
I think it's going to be a full collaborative effort between all of those groups because they all have a vested interest that are similar but not identical to one another. So if I'm the facilities manager, I want to know room utilization. I want to get some data and metrics so that I'm not spending money on 10-person rooms when every conference only has 3 people, every meeting only has 3 people. I want to build 3-person meeting rooms. And then from the IT perspective, what's going on my network, what kind of traffic it is, where is it going to go, and do I have to manage it, or am I just going to create a VLAN and not worry about it ever again? And then from the strict AV end user perspective, what's going to happen when I actually go into this conference room, and what solution are we providing? Like, what problem are we solving? Do I need to have video calls? Do I simply want to put up some digital signage on the wall over there? So it's going to be a collaborative effort. You know, you don't want 10 people in every meeting, but you are going to all work together as a cohesive team.
It's going to be driven. Everybody has their own agenda. I mean, HR has an agenda of being able to deliver messaging, but also interview and understand, be able to capture those interviews and be able to review them later. C-levels being able to send out information to multiple people. So everybody has their own agenda, but the main thing is making sure that it's cohesive. How many times have we spoken to a customer where HR used one platform and then somebody, you know, a few other people bought some other licenses from a different thing, and it was just all over the place. In the end, it has to be managed and owned by the IT side as far as managing the portal, managing the licensing, but there still needs to be an understanding between all the aspects of the business, how they're using it, and what their, you know, what their solution is going to be.
You know, it'll be interesting to see, like today we have ADA requirements, whether there'll be some set of requirements in the future that are based on the COVID-19 regulations. So that may also have an impact.
Interesting. All right, being mindful of time, let's just do one more question. This one isn't really a technology-based question, but do you think the traditional workplace will ever really return to normal?
Yes. Yes.
Hopefully so.
Although my office was, somebody, you gave away my office, but that's okay. I don't mind working remote. But yeah, I mean, I want to start visiting clients again and meeting face to face, because just like we said before, that personal interaction with people, video can't substitute for that. So we are going to see people going back to the office. There's just going to be more precautions taken. It's not going to be taken for granted anymore. And once we get past COVID, there could be something else down the road. And so we're going to be just like the way that there was a major shift after 9/11 as far as security access and things like that. We're going to see the same type of shift with this, but we're going to get back to, call it the new normal if you want. I know it's overused, but we're going to get back there. We're going to be at offices. We're going to be visiting our coworkers. We're going to be visiting our customers and everything in that respect. So I feel strongly we're going to be back to the normal.
Yeah, I would agree. I think though that moving forward, that what this does for us is probably look at designing rooms in a way now moving forward that have a lot more flexibility because, you know, of this pandemic situation. And I think that's going to bring some interesting future technology and designs that going to make AV a lot of fun to be in and to do as we move forward.
Mm-hmm.
Awesome. Thank you, Jonathan. Thank you, John. Thank you, Ben. Really appreciate your time and your insight. I also want to thank everyone who has joined us today, and I hope you found this session valuable. Did have a couple questions. The recorded replay will be available within the next few days. For everybody that attended, you'll get a link to be able to view it again, and those that happen to miss it will be able to see it on a replay. There was a couple requests specific to the presentation. We'll follow up with you directly regarding those. If you do have any follow-up questions or have a topic that you think we should consider for a future webinar, please feel free to email me directly at bchamberlain@verrex.com. That's BCHAM at, BCHAMBERLIN at Verrex, VERREX.com, or you can connect with any of the four of us on LinkedIn. Thank you, everyone. Have a great day. Stay healthy, and we look forward to supporting you in the future. Take care.
Take care.